take it international. They got global companies, we got global unions with...
Let's start this session here. My name is Steve Zeltzer. I'm on the Labor Fest Organizing Committee, and I want to welcome you all today to this important session that we're going to have on the about the life of Al Rojas, who is a founding member of the United Farm Workers, has played an important role on fighting for farm workers, working people, and also fighting for justice, fighting for unionization, involved in fighting for all the working class against racism, discrimination, and also an internationalist, because Al Rojas was an internationalist. He fought for justice all over the world, not just in the United States and Mexico. And he saw the struggle of the working people, indigenous people, as part and parcel of an international struggle. And we're also on Ohlone land here in San Francisco. And one of the things is we can say is that the Ohlone people were here before immigrants came, including Spanish immigrants, and the border has changed in California. California used to be a part of Mexico, and the United States war with Mexico was an effort to take over the land, which they did. And this struggle for internationalism and solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Mexico is critical. And we believe that for Labor Fest, that an injury to one is an injury at all, and that our struggle in San Francisco and the United States is linked up directly with the struggle of the Mexican working people, Mexican farm workers, and the indigenous people. And joining us today are two members of LCLAA in Sacramento, Al Rojas's daughter, Desiree Rojas, and Fatima Garcia. And they're going to be kind of co-hosting this. And in a little bit, the farm workers from Baja are going to be coming on. So maybe Desiree, you can give a greeting as well.
Thank you, Steve. I first want to say it's a great honor to be amongst so many labor comrades and activists here at this year's 2022 Labor Fest. We no doubt have gone through an enormous ordeal with this COVID, and while holding the labor line of justice and human rights. And of course, losing my father was devastating. And it was a devastating blow to many of us and in the labor movement. LCLAA is the acronym for our labor organization. It means Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. We're the Sacramento chapter, and there are many chapters throughout the nation, from Chicago, Pennsylvania, across the nation. In California alone, there's the San Diego chapter, Los Angeles chapter, and we now have and we also have a San Francisco chapter. And our chapter has been very, very strongly organizing for the last 20 years through my father as key labor organizer, building the International Labor Bridge into Mexico. And during a time when everyone was afraid to enter Mexico. And also during a time when, Cesar Chavez was very much against going into Mexico, into Mexico. But my father felt that building that bridge was very important, and it was a part of his self evolution, and also a political evolution that had to take place. But getting back to our chapter real quick, I want to mention that we are tied to both national unions, the AFL-CIO and Change to Win. And the short history of the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement is that during the writing of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. In order to prove discrimination, racism, and mistreatment of Black, brown people at a disadvantage, there had to be investigations conducted in the nation, and that included investigating labor. AFL-CIO at the time was the only national labor national union. And in this investigation nationwide through various unions under this umbrella of the national union, they found that for a fact there is discrimination and racism against people of color. So what they encouraged is for labor to create organizations tied to national to surface the issues of the issues that affected us in our communities, whether it's a Black, Mexican, brown, Asian, economically disadvantaged communities, and to address the unfair hiring practices and labor practices, and to involve more people of color inside of labor, and to have the discussion to be able to address the discrimination within the labor movement. So along with the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, you'll see there's many Black trade organizations, a teachers trade organization, longshoremen, Black trade organization. So they're out there. There's not as many as there should be, but we have been in existence in the nation for a very long time. And in California, our chapter has been very key and the leader in building this bridge into Mexico through my father, through our little chapter, that you would think that we would have a budget of maybe $5 or $10 million. What we were able to do, the level of organizing and what he was able to do was absolutely, it was amazing. And it's way over the heads of many institutions and organizations with the realms and the independent unions that he helped birth in Mexico and also here in California.
Okay, thank you. In honor of Al, we're going to have a slideshow about Al's life.
Let us never forget what we fought for 100 years. With blood, sweat, broken bones, death and tears. They call us radicals and thugs, but we're just misunderstood. Standing in the same place that my father and my grandfather stood. Respect and honesty, pensions, benefits, and salary. Support my family, defending human rights instead of minimum wage. The punch clock, slave trade. Get engaged, operate, fight the corporation every day. There's no justice for the working man, and nothing comes for free to us working men. So much corruption from the wicked man, cause there's no jobs out there for us working men. I bet they never worked a day at all. I bet they never worked a day at all. Make a difference locally, but we can take it international. They got global companies, we got global unions with connections who wear their dirty laundry on the net and in the papers, exposing them for what they are. Criminals disguised as bankers, cut costs and cut corners, roll back pay rates and hours, inflict pain on the community, squeezing us for every last dollar. Pure capitalistic machine, preying on us every minute. Get up, the whole world resist. Raise your fist and sing it. There's no justice for the working man, and nothing comes for free to us working men. So much corruption from the wicked man, cause there's no jobs out there for us working men. I bet they never worked a day at all. I bet they never worked a day. I bet they never worked a day at all. I bet they never worked a day. And as the war rages on, we scream hostile Victoria, Bastia, brothers and sisters understand.
Okay, thank you all. And that was some pictures of Al, and looking at those brings back strong memories of our struggles together, our international struggles together. So you're here with us, Al, and you've left your mark on us, and the struggle continues for the working class here, the working class in Mexico, all poor and oppressed people around the world. So today we have an important presentation that hasn't been actually made before, and that is the role of the government investigating, the FBI investigating organizers of farm workers in California. And joining us is Angel Guitierrez. He's a professor at the University of Texas in Arlington. He organized the Mexican American Youth Organization, Raza Unida Party, Center for Mexican American Studies in 1994. And he's also an author about his struggle. And he's going to talk to us about the role of the FBI in investigating Al Rojas and what he learned. So welcome to Labor Fest, and thanks for doing this presentation for us.
And so I thank you for asking me to participate. As you see, this is on Al Rojas, basically Alberto, although most of the time it was just Al to everyone. I guess that's part of the process of getting our names changed over time. Anyway, and just one small correction. I was at the University of Texas at Arlington. That's where I am the emeritus professor, but I'm on my way now to Cal Poly University at San Luis Obispo. I'll be there beginning September 19. So if you need to find me, look for me at, as they call it, SLO, San Luis Obispo. And some people even say St. Louis. And I said, I thought they were talking about Missouri. Next slide, please.
Let me see here. Okay.
Congratulations.
All right. You know, we are all very familiar with these characters that are on the screen now. At the beginning, the United Farm Workers was just Cesar Chavez, period. The persistence and the tenacity of Dolores made herself into an icon. Of course, they both started together. And I think she was probably more influential on Cesar than anybody else, including Cesar's wife, Elena, at that time, Favela. But they started at the CSO. Now, Dolores was a teacher. But anyway, y'all could read that story in many other books. Next slide, please. This is not exhaustive, believe me, but I just want to show you the volume of books on Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Of course, there's more on Cesar, top line, than there are on Dolores, bottom line. But you know, there's not many on the union itself. Or other people involved in the union who were very central to its growth and its development. Next slide. Now, I have written several books. Here's a copy on the side here of the cover that you see on the screen, and then you've got the latest one there, My March with Cesar. Let me talk about that one first. Marco Lopez Quesada was the last legal general counsel for Chavez, and was with him when he passed away in Arizona. The cover is very telling. The cover is, you see a young lawyer, Marcos Lopez Quesada, stopping an officer from serving Cesar because he was his lawyer, but physically you can see the confrontation and keeping him. Because as you well know, until you get served, you have no notice of what is coming against you. But anyway, I got interested in this for my own background because I was an activist and I was under surveillance for a long time. And I just assumed, like everybody else did, that we were just a little kind of paranoid. And if we didn't think that, people told us we were. So after so many break-ins and so many thefts of records and things of that sort, and shootings and whatnot, we began to realize, oh, this is serious. There's somebody out here to destroy us. Now, as an activist, that's the story. But as a scholar, here's the other story. When I started the grad school and started working on doing papers and things, first of all, the Chicano topics that I wanted to write about and research were not of interest to the mainstream academy. That's still the problem. It's still a problem, okay? So the other thing I found out was that when I wanted to go into the FBI, records and use FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, I was, the only one. I think I still am. That's one of the biggest sins in the academy of scholars. They will not look into the records that exist in the FBI or any other intelligence agency, much less other agencies which are available, to see how, we are not the ones basically at fault for some of the failures of our efforts. We have a tendency to blame ourselves, and we do so merciless. We're so critical of each other without thinking, well, who is helping us mess up? Who is helping us go the wrong way? Who is helping us in not accomplishing our goals? Well, I've got a quick answer. It's the FBI, among many others. There's 19, I know now there's a 21 intelligence agencies in the country. So I began this kind of research for my own interest. Of course, I didn't write about myself. I wrote about others, and this is the first one that I wrote is on Chavez. And then the next one was on Reyes Lopez Tijerina, which some of you may know. He was a land grant fella from New Mexico, the one who said, as Steve at the beginning said that California was taken from Mexico. He's the one that said our lands have been stolen. This is our homeland, and all these people that are here are guests. Okay. So anyway, I realized that after I did the second book that I was going to die before I could finish writing about all the people that I have files on, because I made it a systematic effort, given what happened to us in Texas. We formed the Raza Unida Party, as you know, or heard in the introduction. We also had a candidate for governor, Ramiro Ramsey Muñiz, and he was busted on drug charges. And he told us from the beginning, he said, he was a lawyer. He said, it's that fine line where you got to advise clients of what they can do and can't do. But they claim that I was on the other side actually conspiring to possess drugs and distribute drugs and so on. So that's when we began systematically writing, making requests, FOIA requests for FBI files, because we knew that we had help in screwing up, in not accomplishing our goals. I'll give you one other example, which is a story that needs to be told, but it hasn't been yet. Our Raza Unida Party chapter in Las Vegas, New Mexico, the entire chapter, all the members were raided and arrested one evening when they were meeting and charged with possession of drugs and conspiracy to distribute and so on and so on and so on. The sheriff who led the raid was Emilio Naranjo. Now, we had to spend a lot of money we didn't have on legal defense of our chapter in New Mexico. Fortunately, we were able to prove that the sheriff had planted the drugs. We got him indicted, we got him tried, we got him convicted, but unfortunately, the good old boy network in New Mexico, the governor pardoned him. So he served very little time, and then he came back with a full pardon, and he ran and became a state senator in New Mexico. So, the system is pretty stacked against you. If you're an activist, certainly an activist that goes against the grain. Next slide, please. So as I was telling you, I decided that, at this rate, if I write a book on Ramsey, if I write a book on Antonio Rendain, who was the only Mexican involved with Chavez and others at the time of building the UFW, I was going to die before I finished writing about everybody. So I switched over to multi-chapter books. You see one on the side here. These are Lexington books. These are hardbound. I switched over to multi-chapter so that I could write about, say, 8 or 10 people at one time, 2 organizations, and 1 event. And that's what got me going on expanding, so to get the material out so people know that they were not bad organizers, they were not bad leaders, they were not bad organizations. They had government help with repression, destruction, neutralization, you name it. So one of the places these books are written when I was at Michigan State University in summer visiting scholar status. And I went over to the Wayne State because that's where most of the union files for all kinds of unions are located. And I found, these about the Pittsburgh boycott, because as you all well know, Pittsburgh was just one of many places in the country as well as international where there were boycott committees led by people sent from Delano of the United Farm Workers. And in Pittsburgh, Frank Ortiz Sr. was the first one. So I thought that was the end of the story in terms of the boycott office in Pittsburgh. Well, mistake, wrong, no. The real story is Albert Rojas and wife Elena, who were the mainstay there in 69, 70, and so on. So, but here's a copy of where you find the material, as well as another little hint. I don't know if I can find this real quick, but every chapter that I have in the Chavez book starts off with a poster. I don't know if you can see this on the side, but anyway, as well as the cover, these posters are at the Wayne State, and I got permission to use the whole collection of posters to be the dividers from one chapter to another. So if you want to have an art exhibit, you might try to get those. It'd be a wonderful exhibit. Next slide, please. So I see that I'm not the one with original photographs. I just saw the other slide, and then there's another couple of things I've seen.
Yes.
I can repeat it. And Desiree, this is a treasure for you to see yourself. I guess you must have been about 3 years old and barely able to walk.
Right.
But you were already on the picket line.
I was. I was about 3.5 there.
Yeah, well, I wasn't wrong. Now, I know some of you have suggested to me that I learn how to spell, and I know how to spell, but to me, the H doesn't go there. The H is English from England, just like in Edinburgh, Texas. It's with the start of the G. It doesn't have an H. That's the other Edinburgh over in Europe. So anyway, I know that Pittsburgh is spelled a different way by others, especially people in Pittsburgh. But anyway, Al and family and Elena and family were one of the few of the farm workers who were sent nationwide, and in his case, first Chicago and then on to Pittsburgh. And that's where he stayed for a number of years organizing the boycotts, okay? So that's the picture and that's the explanation. Next slide. Now, I couldn't, this is just me not being a good techie, but I'm gonna put it over here on the gallery side. This is the actual document. And Alan Stein has got a copy of the file. Maybe if someone wants it, he can send it to you if you want the whole file. But you can see the document and redaction there with the black. So all I did was what you see on the screen is me taking the appropriate language to connect the FBI files to Al Rojas. Okay, this was an urgent teletype sent to the director from the FBI Pittsburgh office, and it starts off on June 14th, 1969, a source. Now, this is very telling. There is a book called Snitch, and you're going to be shocked at what I'm going to say. Anywhere from 20 to 40% of the FBI budget that is made public is allocated to informants. Can you believe that? Now, some of these informants are not the most honest people. They're cutting a deal. They'll say whatever needs to be said so they can get their deal, and so on. But I mean, the FBI depends on snitches all over the country and internationally, because the FBI has an office in every U.S. embassy in the world. Now, they're not called FBI. They're called LEGAT for legal attaché, but LEGAT, L-E-G-A-T. That's the FBI inside the embassy. And they're not accountable to the ambassador. They're there for their own purposes. All right. So a source advised that a group consisting of approximately 30 individuals participated in a march to gain recognition for California grape pickers, and led by Albert Rojas, a representative of the UFW, OC, organizing committee at that time. Now, this is the first document where you see his name mentioned, but the whole file is, again, if you can see the gallery, you know, the whole file is about 130 pages or something like that. So not all pages have his name, but they're all related to the activities of the Pittsburgh, because this is the files from the Pittsburgh Boycott Committee, which the FBI was monitoring. All right, next slide. The next one is, you know, about a week later, you see at the top it says FBF LHM. LHM is code for letterhead memorandum. This is, as opposed to the first one you saw, which was just a one-page document. Okay, the teletype was very simple. You know, it starts and ends, you know, all on one page. But the LHM, this one goes on for 4 pages. Okay, and it contains a lot of other information. But we start again with, on June 20, source advised that protested pickets at 5 Kroger stores took place on June 21st. Albert Rojas was arrested on June 20. Remember the prior one? Well, you know, he was arrested after the teletype was sent. So this had to be in the LHM, which summarizes what went on the rest of the week. So he was charged on charges of disorderly conduct. Now, what was that disorderly conduct? Use of a loudspeaker. And Elena Rojas, the wife of Albert Rojas, was also arrested on the same charges. Now, Albert was found guilty and he was fined $25. And the charges against Elena Rojas were dismissed. There's no other explanation, and you know, there's redaction and so on. A redaction is that the black print where they black out, you know, information that is on the documents. Now, there are about a dozen exemptions from release of data. The main ones that are used are B6 and B7. Those are, 6 is national security, 7 is identification of a law enforcement or an informant. All the others are not as relevant, but they're used. So there's a lot of redaction that takes place when they have to release material and they don't want to. In this case, there's not many redactions, but there are some. Next slide. Again, you know, we have another letterhead memo, LHM. This is from July 7th. Now we're, you know, the next month. Again, sources, you know, plural now. So this is the problem that plagues all organizations. There are people within your group, including LCLAA and Sacramento, in California, and nationwide and internationally. There are people inside our organizations that are not with us in true form. They're there to snitch, to inform and to report and to gather intelligence for various intelligence agencies, including local police units. At the local level, in every major city, there's what's called a red squad or red unit.
Red squad. Yeah, red squad.
Yeah, now that doesn't mean communist. It means that they're searching for communists. And anybody who dissents to them is a communist. Hoover could not pronounce a communist. He called it like it was communists, the communists. So the sources, many of them in this LHM, advised that Rojas, a representative of UFWOC and an organizer of the Great Pot, led the demonstrations. In other words, now they're identifying him not as a representative, but as the leader. You know, the word was used representative before. Now he's the leader. That means the main target. Now there are other FBI memos where Hoover instructs field agents to neutralize leaders. Neutralize is a very dangerous word. It can involve even killing, assassination. Now, most of the time they talk about disruption, they talk about harassment, they talk about the surveillance and so on. But all of these words are in the lingo, in the jargon of the FBI, and they use those tactics on leaders. Now, the initial tactic is this. If you write, for example, to the FBI and say, I would like to get the files on Steve Seltzer or Alan Stein or Desiree Rojas, they'll write you back after a few months, and they'll say, we have received this letter from a person claiming to be you. So you need to prove to us that you are you. We want your social security number, your phone number, your cell number, your email addresses, your address, all the stuff that they're not entitled to have. But if you don't provide it, that's the end of your request. Now, so you send it in. Then they write you back saying, okay, so you're you. We need to advise you that if we find nothing, we now have a file on you because you wrote to us. So in language of bees, where we get the honey, this is called cross-fertilization. The bees go from one flower to another flower to another flower. This is exactly what the intelligence units do, and the FBI is the one that started all this. They infect and pollinate all the other agencies by sending them copies of their files. So even if, let's say, the U.S. attorney in Pittsburgh wasn't interested in El Rojas or the great boycotters, now he does, because he's got a file that he's got to open, sent from the FBI. Ditto with the National Security Agency, you name it. Okay, next slide. All right, now we're into October. Now this is not a misspelling on my part. That's the way they spelled his name, Albert. I guess they forgot the T. Now he's the local head of the UFWOC. All right. Now look, at the bottom is what I mentioned. This particular file of this date and everything else that was said in that file, copies were sent to the U.S. Attorney. That's what USA means. The Secret Service, Army Intelligence, CSI, all Pittsburgh police agencies, NISO, Philadelphia, and are being furnished to the above information. So they cross-pollinate, they pollute everybody else, and it makes you a target. Now, the first one, other than the FOIA request that I already elaborated on, is when, let's say that, and you'll see the Chavez granddaughter, Julie, in a little while, when let's say that somebody suggests that Julie be nominated. Well, no, actually, let's start with Cesar. Cesar was actually considered to be invited to the White House to be kind of vetted to see if he would be interested in running the Peace Corps in some country in Latin America. Okay, that's called a name check by the FBI. So they'll send agents to go to wherever the subject is from, in this case, where Chavez was residing at the time, and they'll talk to neighbors, they'll talk to employers, they'll talk to church people, they'll talk to police, they'll talk to everybody. And everybody is admonished that they cannot say that they were visited by the FBI regarding Cesar Chavez or any of you. Okay. Now think about this. What is your neighbor going to think? Your pastor, your grocer, your doctor, your teacher, or your friends, when they're visited by the FBI, they're going to wonder, and don't you know this is true? What did Desiree do? What is Alan up to? What in the world is Steve, getting himself into? And they can't talk about it. So the cloud of doubt and suspicion is already planted. It's called character assassination. So this is what they begin doing, and that's the first step that they do. And so all of that gets reported everywhere. Well, Chavez turned them down, incidentally, on that Peace Corps thing. Next slide, please. All right, now that was just a sample, because I can't do all 120, 30 pages, and there's a lot of other information, but these are the key elements that I wanted you to learn from my preliminary work here with the documents. Here you have a Malcriado newspaper from Chavez. Now, inside there's also a story of how Desiree's mom, Elena, was beaten and hospitalized with serious injuries from this attack. At that particular office. They also had offices bombed and burned and whatnot. And you should read those reports that say that the farm workers bombed and burned their own offices because they wanted attention. It is totally absurd. Anyway, and of course, you got the repeat picture of Al here. That was in the other slide. Next slide, please. Wow. All right. Now, in the Chavez book, the one that I wrote, I talk about, I have two chapters. One is the unraveling of Cesar, where something happened to him, where he began going kind of crazy and not making sense in his decisions. Now, he always was a very micromanager. You know, he was worse than Jimmy Carter. He wanted to know why we were paying, 20 cents more for a tire in Tucson, Arizona, than the regular price. So, things like that. But he also wanted to, he thought of this as a cause, not a union. And it was his cause. And so he never could quite delegate and let go of certain duties and responsibilities necessary to develop a union. And then, he actually believed that he was going to be destined for sainthood. These are my opinions, but I document it with critical analysis in the book. You're going to have to get the book if you want to know what I'm saying. But for example, one of the first things he started to do was to be as paranoid as Hoover. Everybody around him, he suspected of being a communist, and he fired them all. And he fired his general counsel that had been with him forever. And he also started doing some similar tactics that this guy from Synanon, a drug therapist, was doing. These things just totally devastated the trust that workers and union members had in staff. Now, the worst thing was, and you may know, but Chavez began, there in Delano. Then he moved to the edge of town, and then from the edge of town, he moved up into the mountains, getting further and further away from the workers themselves, and had very little to do with them. He would have contact with workers when he went to a place to do a demonstration or a march or a speech, but he wasn't on a daily basis with workers anymore. And the killing point is, this is my rubbing it in, the UFW changed over to the BMW. In other words, the UFW Inc. Became Chavez Inc. All the children and so on, some of them, because they're fighting one another, they all became the heads of certain things. And so the workers had very little input in what was going on. And he got rid of Orendain, Padilla quit, and so on. And of course, he also got rid of the Filipinos, who were actually the ones who started the whole movement. Okay? For his most powerful program was the boycott. Now, the boycott, in 1965, when he created the union with the Filipinos, they declared the boycott against grapes. Okay, but it continued all the way to 78, which is when he decided that he was going to end it. So for whatever reason, no reason at all. Now, Chavez died, and tells you there where he died. Now, by 2000, look at how much profits were being generated and how much it was grown. The grape pickers group had grown because of the no boycott. Okay, so it kind of left the growers to go back to their powerful positions that they were before. And all the people that were in the boycott, stationed across the country from one day to the next, had no job anymore. Not that they were making any kind of money. They were paid miserable wages and very little support. So they had to go find themselves something else to do, including Al and Elena and the four kids at that particular time. So they came back to Sacramento and the area here in California. But Al continued his activism. Next slide, please. And I just give you one example here. Not only did Al disagree with stopping the boycott, but there were many other disagreements that he had with the leadership and with Chavez directly. One of those was, the ties to the Democratic Party, and many of the mistakes that Chavez made. I'll give you one example. I had several meetings as head of the Raza Unida Party. I had several meetings with Chavez, asking him for permission, if you will, to let us come organize electorally in the San Joaquin Valley. Okay, he objected. He said, "No, we're Kennedy Democrats, and we're not going to get involved with local politics." Said, "But these are the police that are hunting you down. These are the police that beat up your people and look the other way when the Teamsters beat up your people. You need to take control of the police chief, city hall, the code enforcement, et cetera, et cetera." Chavez would never agree. said he was a Kennedy Democrat. Okay, well, you can see they still are. That's why I got the picture there of Julie, who is now the top ranking person of Mexican origin in the Biden administration. Okay, she also started with Obama. Well, that means that she wasn't very critical, because they don't keep you around if you disagree and if you offer constructive criticism. It's only when you go along that they keep you. You're pretty face to have, especially with the name of Julie Chavez Rodriguez. Okay, so Al went on, and lately, he was very involved with the Pro DACA. That's the deferred action for children arrivals. The kids that the parents brought them here from Mexico and Central America and other countries through no fault of their own, and are now allowed to stay here and enjoy in-state tuition. And the Dreamers, which is another piece of legislation which lets them go to college at state rates and so on. So Rojas was very much involved with that kind of information and programs. Next slide. Now here's an interesting thing about the dissension between and the animosity that developed subsequent to the boycott. Here's a letter from Al to the president then, which was his son-in-law, regarding the anniversary of the UFW and the grape strike. And Al is saying, a lot of people asked me whether I was invited or attended the UFW commemoration, and he didn't. But he did ask that a letter be read. Okay. Now this is the letter from Al to Rodriguez. Okay. Now next slide. And here's the actual letter. Okay, Brother Arturo, and he goes on. It goes on for 2 slides, but you can have the slide to read it if you want. Well, we don't have time to read it here, but Al is discussing, some of the problems that he has seen of what has led to the demise of the UFW. Next slide. You see it continues, and then you get him signing off at the end there. Now at the bottom you got a clip. Maybe it was a clip that you can see. If you click on that, you'll be able to see a slide of like a video on Al. Okay, next slide. Now he passed away, as you know, and again, before I go further, you see in the real light blue, and I apologize because I couldn't change it to any other color. You have another YouTube site video that you can click on and get more and more video of his life and family. Okay, but this is the obituary when Albert Joseph Medrano Rojas passed away on March 20th, and he was from what it says here is kidney failure, and he was already 80-something years of age. Okay, so this is what I wanted to share with you as to what a little glimpse as to the contributions that Rojas made, as typical of many other people leading boycott efforts in major cities, and were the backbone, the muscle behind Chavez's boycott that for whatever reasons he ended it for no reason at all. So this is the end of my presentation, I think. Thank you. Answer questions or what?
Thank you very much, Angel. I think it was an important contribution you made. And let's open it up a little bit if there are comments or questions people would like to add to or ask Angel. Well, I would say that one of the things that Al fought for is more democracy in the United Farm Workers. He believed that the rank and file should have a voice, and it should be a rank and file controlled union. And I think that was a major point of contention between Al and his wife, Elena, and the UFW. He and his family spent their lives supporting the farm workers, and when it came to having a democratic debate and discussion about the direction, that was excluded because of the political character of Cesar Chavez becoming basically a family union. And
point well made. It's in that letter. Al elaborates on exactly that.
That's right, and also Al's concern about the fact that farm workers today in California are still unorganized, majority of farm workers. I mean, and now is the time to organize them. The power of farm workers is tremendous now. because the people are dependent on these farm workers. And
And us
also
as consumers.
as consumers, that's right. So there's tremendous potential to organize, but there's not really an organizing campaign going on by the UFW. There's no popular movement. It's mainly electoral support the Democrats. The Democrats will save us. And I think that the rise of racism and fascism in this country is a great danger, and especially Latinos, immigrant workers, migrants, and the need to have an organization to defend them on the ground is absolutely critical. The government is not going to defend people. And we know from what happened during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, that the farm workers suffered tremendously because there wasn't protection, there wasn't PPE for the farm workers, and there was no protest by the UFW to demand that these farm workers be provided PPE, which is a basic necessity to keep safe. So many farm workers got sick. Central Valley was a catastrophe. Foster farms, many immigrant workers died. Latinos died because there was no protection. And these public health departments are controlled by the companies. Foster farms, the farm owners control. It's like the plantation. These areas are like the plantation in Central Valley. And what you were saying, Angel, about the failure to politically organize independently against the Democrats and Republicans for workers' representatives, people's representatives, leaves you helpless if you're not organized politically and if you don't challenge politically these basically boss-controlled governments. That's what you have.
Yeah, and unions, right? I think if I may add, is how he made sure we understand that unions should be ran independent, democratically by workers through his action of being so critical, not only on the UFW, SCIU, the AFL-CIO, you know, their position in NAFTA was really critical of what caused the migration of poor working people from Mexico to come up north. So I think that's also something that he was really great at, connecting both, you know, indigenous people of this continent, workers on both sides of the border, and saying, hey, the same worker that's on that side of the border is the same worker that's on this side of the border. The ones we need to be fighting are the corporations, right? Like, he was really vocal and really strategic in how he organized around that.
Okay, Cindy, you had a question?
Yeah, when I was living in San Francisco back in 2015, I heard on the radio about the strike against Driscoll. I didn't know anything about it, so I stopped buying Driscoll. But now that I'm back home in Minneapolis, a lot of the food co-ops still occasionally carry Driscoll products. And so they obviously don't know that there's still, I mean, I thought maybe, well, did the boycott end? So then when I saw like how organized they were in sending people to other parts of the country to educate people about the boycott back in the 70s when I was a kid, yeah, I knew all about it then when I was a kid, but yeah, so I don't know. I wish if somebody could educate me about that so that I could go to the co-op manager and tell them, stop buying this.
Especially at a co-op.
Yeah, exactly.
We're supposed to be empowered, you know.
Preet, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say about UFW, you know, they do give the Democratic Party a lot of cover to support things that they really shouldn't. And since the general population is not aware of like where the UFW stands, things like the Farm Worker Modernization Act, which is not being pushed, like they have given it their approval. And so now Democrats are free to say, well, this is the farm worker bill. And even though other farm workers are trying to push back. And so I wish some of the more connections were more well known to help kind of show people the kind of alliances that the UFW has and why they may not always be fully aligned with what the farm workers are demanding. I think that's important.
And you know, the USMCA, everyone knows about NAFTA, which basically privatized the ajitas in Mexico, forced the indigenous people off their land, pushed them to the United States, where many of the farm workers were forced into labor, agricultural workers here in the United States. And then they were driven off of driven out of the United States by the racist immigration laws and forced back into Mexico. And now you have 70,000 workers and their families in Baja. And we're going to be hearing from some farm workers who are going to be coming on later to talk about their conditions. But it's virtually slave labor in Baja, and they $7 a day. And this attack on the working class, brought about the Driscoll's boycott. But there was a struggle because the United Farm Workers Union never supported the boycott. In fact, they don't really support the workers in Mexico. And Chavez himself called in the INS against migrant workers here. So they have and he also went to the Philippines supporting Marcos during the time Marcos was involved in crushing the working class in the Philippines. So, the role of the AFL-CIO is important because the AFL-CIO, for people who don't know, has a thing called the Solidarity Center, which does their international relations. And guess how much they get from the United States government through the National Endowment of Democracy? They get $75 million a year.
Jesus.
$75 million a year. And they recently hired up to 4 agents, operatives to go into Mexico, where they say they're using USMCA to bring democracy in Mexico. And it was recently reported by David Bacon that they're helping the farm workers in Baja, the Solidarity Center. But I mean, in reality, the NAFTA and USMCA was the institution of privatization and deregulation in Mexico, recolonization of Mexico, the takeover by US multinationals of the railroads, the mines, the telecom. This was all done as basically the corporate takeover of Mexico. And unfortunately, the AFL-CIO supported this UMCA, the latest agreement. And, inside the AFL-CIO now, there's going to be a struggle against taking money from the government. When you take money from the US government, $75 million a year, you're not an independent agency. You become an agent of the US government. They do what they want. And certainly the AFL-CIO, even though they're getting $75 million a year for international operations, has not been publicizing the conditions of the workers in Baja. So that tells you where this money is not going, and that is to defend the workers in Mexico. Does anyone else want to add? Desiree? Or
If Desiree, do you want to go? Or
Desiree?
I was going to ask Angel a follow-up question on his presentation, if I may.
Okay, why don't you go, Al?
Okay. The question would be in relation to the different boycotts in the US. You mentioned Chicago, where my home base. Shout out to Labor Beat Chicago, by the way. There was such a center set up there. Al Rojas's counterpart, Alicio Medina. I'd imagine that's one of the reasons you want to contact him. I believe that he's in DC with SEIU. He's like head treasurer. So can you surmise, are there files then on every one of the cities that were being organized this way?
I'm sure there are, because they all got arrested, they all got beat up, they all got charged with one thing or another. They were always under surveillance and so on. So, but you've got to have names and patience, because I already elaborated on the process. And then it helps if you've got a friendly lawyer to sue in federal court, because sometimes they'll redact or they'll claim they have nothing. For example, I don't know that you can see this, but you can Google the name of the book, but you can see the bottom part of the book here where it says from 65 to 75. You see it there?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's 10 years.
Right. That's the only files they'll release. Chavez didn't die till 93. So, where's the documentation from 75? I mean, after April 75 to 93. Now, I'm a lawyer, but I'm writing the books. I haven't got time to get involved in a 3, 4, 5 year litigation struggle on my own behalf to get these files. So yes, they're out there. You need to have names, you need to have some resources, and you need to have some backup to at least threaten to sue. Sometimes that'll work, okay?
But one shout out I wanted to give to your great presentation, but also the research. I was a grad student at Wayne State when they acquired that collection. I worked in the Walter Reuther Library. Kathy Schmeling was actually one of my supervisors who did the finding aid on that. So it brings back a lot of goosebumps and memories related to that. And then my instructor, and I want to acknowledge him, Dr. Philip Mason, since passed away about 1.5 years ago. But he was responsible for approaching Chavez early on. You can ask yourself, why wasn't the Chavez collection here in California where you would think it should be? But he had the foresight to see the first institution that could support him and with some financial assistance too for his collection was Wayne State. To their credit, they also have the great IWW, International Workers of the World archives, the Wobblies. They have the posters you were referring to. It is a monumental treasure trove. And I'd never finished the dissertation there. I became a labor archivist. But one more comment on that. My dissertation, which was it was presented but never published, was called Killing the Union. And it was about labor spies in Michigan, especially Henry Ford's goon squads during the 30s. They were tantamount to the Red Squad, for Christ's sake, the way they could try and bust the union and spy on the workers at the, at the factories and the auto plants. Studs Terkel did the interview for Hard Times about that period, and talking about Ford's the goons, and of course today they're in Brooks Brothers suits and they infiltrate. But it was all there in the Wayne State's labor archives. It's an incredible collection. So thank you for all your research.
You're welcome. Well, one comment on Eliseo Medina. The reason I'm trying to find him and get access to him, but this invitation goes out to all of you. The Raza Unida Party is going to have a 50th year commemorative event at the University of Texas, San Antonio, September 15th through the 17th. Now, it's in my email. If you get Alan or contact me, I'll be glad to send you the link, but it's razunidapartyreunion.org and free, your registration and so on. But we're looking for someone to come speak for 40, 45 minutes on the future of labor. And that will be on Saturday, the 17th. What is the future of labor? So we want some ideas, some proposals, some initiatives. Who's doing some of the progressive stuff within unions? But we're needing a speaker. Now, Valdemar Velasquez, Flock, Ohio, is kind of, I'll come. I don't know if I'm going to come. I don't know if I want to talk about that topic or, so we're kind of getting desperate here because we're only about 60 days away. So if any one of you wants to come and talk about that, let me know. We're welcome to have you.
That's something we should post on H Labor, HNet Humanities Online. They all specify, in topical historical subjects. So maybe H Labor, that would be a call, a shout out, or Steve's network.
Yeah. Okay, Desiree, you have your hand up, and then Cindy.
Fatima is little poster or background has popped up twice, and I think she's trying to talk or say.
Oh, Fatima, then
something.
Go.
Oh no, I'm not.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to say that I want to say Jose to Jose Angel Guitierrez. First of all, thank you very much for that presentation. And you triggered memories, all the things trigger memories. You don't realize they're there, or you do, until it's triggered, right? All this history. But I do want to mention that many people don't know this. Fatima knows this. Steve knows this. And Al and Stein know this because they were close to my father, and they organized with them and or mentored by my father, like I was. But the beginning and the birthing of the United Farm Workers Union, there has to be some clarification with this. Caesar didn't like talking about the birthing of the United Farm Workers Union, but it's very important that I explain how this happened, because we are working. We have a writing team together, and we are beginning the process to write my father's biography. And my father told this story 1,000 times, and like I said, the people that I just mentioned heard this story 1,000 times, but I'm going to briefly touch on it here. The Independent United Farm Workers Union, birthed out of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, was birthed by Oscar Gonzalez, Al Rojas, and 2 other people out of San Jose and Oxnard, California. At that same time, CSO, Community Service Organization, which was led by Cesar Chavez, Gilbert Padilla, Dolores Huerta, out of the Valley, were a 401 nonprofit organization. And at that same time, you had UFWOC, the Agricultural Workers of California Committee, which was tied to the AFL-CIO. It was an AFL-CIO labor committee led by Larry Ityelang, Oscar Veracruz, and Andy Newton, and others, but the Filipino organizers who started the Great Boycott in the Valley, and that was the boycott that stemmed out of that area, predominantly led by Larry Ityelang, already a long-time labor organizer who was in his probably late 30s, early 40s at that time. So my point to this is that there was a merge. And in this merge, the 3 entities came together and they formed the UFWOC. And then later on at the convention, they voted to affiliate with the AFL-CIO. Now, why is this important? It's very important because, one, my father, my parents didn't understand, or wouldn't, it's not that they didn't understand, they didn't feel that it was important to surface this after the merge. After the merge, they became one union, and carrying the Great Boycott was very significant. And that meant my family, when they went back east, what they were doing was something that had never been done before. This is all new ground. We know about the previous huelgas out of California, the Pixley strike. We know about Texas, New Mexico, but forming an actual and building, birthing and building an actual Brown People's Farm Worker Union was unheard of. So they were treading in new water, and when we took the Great Boycott to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it was one of the most difficult states to enter because of the strong labor, steel, industrial union industry there. And so we were looked upon as being very foreign to this state. The one thing we did have in common was poverty, which brought us in solidarity. I feel that this is very important to touch on, and I do remember very, very vividly how emotional and how devastating the impact was on my family in Pittsburgh. We lived off of donated food and clothing, housing. We the Catholic diocese is who paid our rent. My parents earned $5 a week. And when you spoke about the FBI agents inside. My parents knew and understood that there was something not right. They just didn't know who and what, but they knew something wasn't right. And they knew that as long as they continued organizing and they stood on track with their beliefs and they pushed the boycott, they had nothing to hide. And so, but it was very, very devastating. My family was terrorized, not only in Pittsburgh, but also in Poplar, California. This is very important history. And when you compare it to the Black people's movement in this country, the Black community and labor and activists and civil rights activists have been very good and excellent about telling the story of terrorism in their communities. But in the Mexican brown community, Latino community, we do not articulate this enough. But this psychological war, economical war, and racist war and attack against us and other organizers was absolutely so intense, so horrifying, that the shock and moving on with your life was extremely difficult. When your mom's coming home from the hospital after her head was broken apart out of Poplar, California. When they opened up the Larry Itlilong Center, I and Fatima didn't mention this, but she is the secretary of the labor of our chapter. She and I went to Poplar amongst Harpreet Shima was there. And in fact, Steve Zeltser was there. David Bacon was there. There was a lot of key people there that documented the history of speeches and this event of opening up this center, which was very well celebrated. But it also gave us the opportunity to share a lot of material and a huge photo collection that is still owned by our family, that is in display there at the Larry Itlilong Center. And that malcriado that you showed, the full page of it has been blown up poster size there at the service center, at the community center, so people can see that. But I've always been very fascinated with these documents, and what based on my own research, is the enormous amount of hours that they detailed, that they followed my family and my dad, is incredible. And I know that my parents' comadre, who is a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, also did some research on this too, and found that they really put a lot of effort into figuring out whether we were driving a communist campaign in Pittsburgh. And it was a very difficult time. I know it was very difficult for my parents, and we knew that we were followed all the time. We were followed in California. We were followed in Yolo County, and this seemed to have been a norm with us. We began to get used to it. We got used to the sheriff and Black agent cars following us. And but it was also very stressful, and but I appreciate you very much for bringing this out. And I really feel that my dad is an unsung hero. He's touched many people's hearts. He mentored many people, but key people who were very close to him, and he accomplished a lot in his life. And Steve, has recorded many hours of his speeches, and And the letter that you showed that my dad made public regarding the 50th anniversary, my father was very upset and extremely disappointed when at the previous convention, the UFW decided to accept the money from Budweiser Corporation that led to replacing the black Weather Eagle with the Budweiser logo. That was extremely disappointing. It was like a slap to the face of all farm workers. You know, the message that you're carrying, that money meant more, alcohol and buying beer meant more to advertise this logo on a flag of blood, sweat, and tears was disgusting. And in fact, I believe that the previous or the convention after that, my father showed up with students, and I think Fatima may have been there. I was not there, and they protested outside of the convention, and it was a devastating embarrassment blow to them. But he felt that they deserved it. They deserved it for being so irresponsible in doing this. But that letter that he wrote and he made public, we wrote that together, and that was a very difficult moment for him. That was actually really a 7-page letter, and we cut it down to 2 pages. And those who knew my father, he spoke a lot, and when he wrote, there was a lot to cover. And the most significant part of that letter for me is at the end, when he said the other reason why he refused to attend this 50th annual anniversary is also because of the mistreatment that my family endured by the union. It's no secret, but the union, there was a lot of politics, and we were very mistreated. And my father was very upset about that still, the disrespect and the mistreatment, and it continues. I will say this, Fatima knows this because she was at my side, but the day, 2 days after my father passed away, I uploaded some pictures of my family on their website, the UFW website, which they give you an option to do that. And within 12 minutes, they removed all 8 pictures that I tried to upload in honor of my father. And to this day, they have not acknowledged my father or honored him. And this is the man that helped build and birth this union. And I expected them to remove the pictures. I expected them not to acknowledge my father. But there was something very meaningful about that for me, to acknowledge the fact that there's no little space in history for our contribution, and it's almost it's invisible almost. But the good thing is that my father was very resilient and taught us to be very resilient and taught us to move forward and to continue and not to stagger and not to stand in hurt feelings, but to move forward and to continue organize, mobilize, and resist. It's a famous logo out of LCLAA. And, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing right now. We continue the work, and he would expect that. And he would also want us to continue pushing everything you see on that Primero de Mayo poster, all those issues. And but this little button that I'm wearing here, he wore this button. This is a button he actually designed, and out of La Paz, they made it for him. When we were in Yolo County, after we left La Paz, my father was a regional organizer in that area, over Napa, and also in the Yolo County area. And in 1973, 74, we were organizing on the tomato strike. So this is actually a little tomato, and it says YOLO at the bottom, because this is when we were organizing YOLO tomato farm workers. And one of the first offices out of this strike, it wasn't a boycott, it was a strike, was at DQU University. And from there, a little office was donated, the space was donated to us in Davis, California, where we started organizing with a lot of the Chicano students out of Mecha, out of UC Davis, and also a Sac State, like Mark Diaz, Papadilla, Jose Montoya, the Malaquias brothers, and many more. And they were all students when they were out on the tomato strike with us here in Yolo County. So this little button, there's not many of them left, but this is a very precious little button. And of course, the Driscoll boycott button, which he designed, and his last contribution to the redesign of the Driscoll boycott button was adding Andrew Williamson to the button. And he was very, that was very important for him to do. He felt that Driscoll shouldn't sit on the button alone. Andrew Williamson had to be mentioned as well. But your presentation was wonderful, and I want to thank you very much for that.
Okay, sorry. Any other comments?
Desiree, I have a comment. History will bear you out, and the legacy of your father, Al. I had a rereading one of the transcripts on our oral history with Al, 2002, and I want to just, this emphasizes what you've been talking about, and you might remember him. It was Father, I believe it's pronounced McIlvaine, a very radical priest in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And Al says, among others, if it were not for him and the church, that day we were really tired from a long journey on the road. I'm having slept in the desert, having slept in parks, having slept in the car, having slept in people's homes along the way. Maybe 4 or 5 days of travel, eating bologna sandwiches in the parks. We ended up with this priest, and his maid invited us to sit down and to eat and to have supper with him. And then he goes on to describe support they had and your family had from the steel workers. Speaking of Pittsburgh, where steel is king. So I guess the steel workers, he says, and Father O'Malley had made contact with them. He drove us over to the hotel. It was unbelievable. This is the part I read to Angel. It was unbelievable, the condition that we were in, physical attire in the car. When we drove to the hotel, the doorman in his nice, flashy, long skirted trench coat and his little hat and his red gloves, red trim black coat, opens the door to the car and says, quote, "Can I have your bags?" unquote. My wife then, Elena, says, quote, "What does he mean bags?" I said, "Well, give him your bags. Whatever we have is bags. That's what he wants." Well, okay. What he wanted was our luggage, so we gave him literally bags. They were brown paper Safeway food bags. And, and you got that when you go into the grocery store. That's what our clothes were in. That was our luggage. So of course, it would not have been a Kroger bag.
Right, right. I've heard this story many times, and I don't remember that moment because I was very little, but my mom cries a lot when she tells this story because she was embarrassed. She thought the man saw inside the car and saw our bags, and we didn't know that what they meant was bags were luggage because we didn't have luggage. And so when we all got off the car, we were this Mexican farm worker family with everything we owned in these paper grocery bags. And when we walked into the lobby, there were women with beautiful hats and coats and beautiful shoes. And there were chandeliers that we never imagined to see in our lives. And they took us up on an elevator that we never ever been on an elevator before. And we had a room with beds, and we were very exhausted, very grateful, and we never ate so good in our life. It felt like my mom said that the food was delicious. It was different. It was new. They weren't accustomed to be treated this way. And when they were told they were going to stay there 2-3 nights, my parents could not believe it. They said, where is this the way people live in Pittsburgh? Well, later on, the church found us housing in of course, and the church and also the Jewish community was a large part of sustaining our lives there. If it wasn't for the Catholic, Black, and Jewish community, we would have starved or froze to death in Pittsburgh for sure. The community and the people really helped us and really believed in what we were doing, and they sympathized with us. And I think also, per my parents, they really felt like, who in their right goddamn mind would take their children in a little car with $50 and one phone number and from California to Pittsburgh to push a boycott? Who in the hell does something like that? And so people were just as curious and as they were, supportive, but they were amazed. They couldn't believe it. And remember, this was a time of change in our country. This was time of a huge unrest, the civil rights movement. Labor was kicking off. I mean, there was a lot of change going on in the country. And so this, the revolution for change was there. So people were open and willing to hear. They were hungry to learn and to hear what this boycott was about. And so it was a very shocking and striking moment. My sister Debbie says that when she was little, when she was sitting in the back seat of the car, she was so tired and is so exhausted from the trip that maybe every 3 hours she would tap my dad's shoulder, and in his ear she would ask him, "Dad, are we there yet?" And he would say, "Almost, almost." And then when one moment she had asked him, she said, "Dad, are we there yet?" And he said, "Mija, we're 3 miles away. Once we drive under this bridge, we're there." But what they were expecting was a small city, a very small city. But once they drove underneath through this tunnel to get to downtown Pittsburgh, the city opened up to my parents and to all of us in the car. And my sister Debbie said, "Is this Pittsburgh?" And he said, "Yes, it is." And my mom said, "Where the hell are we?"
Mhm.
what is this place? I thought it was a small town, Albert. And it was a different world. And you know, one number, $50. The next stop is a payphone, hoping that they're gonna pick up on the other end. And that was our beginning. And
Wow.
it's intense. It's intense.
Thank you so much for sharing. That is,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's tremendous. We have some guests, new guests from Mexico, but Cindy, did you want to make a quick comment or question?
Yeah, I just had a comment and a question. I wanted to thank Desiree for sharing your personal stories because it makes it so much more real and you can really feel like you were there and like understand what you're talking about. It's very cool. Thank you. And I wanted to ask Dr. Gutierrez, you talked about the trouble of getting documents from the FBI through FOIA. And on the news, they always talk about getting documents through FOIA, and it sounds like a really easy thing to do. And I had no idea it was such an ordeal. Is that only because it was, you know, your particular situation, or is that always, do you always have to give your social security number and all of that just to get information from the county clerk or whatever?
Yes and no. No, you don't get information from the county clerk. This is all documents that the FBI has in DC or at an FBI office around the country or at the National Archives and Records Administration, NARA. That's what you can get. Now, what you need is patience, just patience and perseverance. You will get the documents eventually. Now, you can go to fbi.gov, FOIA, FOIA, and you'll come to a website where you can make the request electronically, but there's also at the very top right, there's a directory. In other words, if you click on C, you will see all the files that have been declassified under the letter C, and you'll find Chavez in there now, and you'll find, you know, these 10 years worth of records. So there's some that are already available because so many people have asked for them. But if you're asking, you know, for the first time on something, it's going to take a little while. But if you persevere and keep a log so that you can and keep the copies, you will get them all the time. They will eventually have to do it because they are under law mandate to respond within a certain time. And they do respond, but normally not what you want. Saying, well, you know, we're backlogged, we're processing material that requests from 2014. There's another trick. They'll say, you know, you have to agree that to pay at $150 an hour for us to search the files. So you have to blindly agree. Yeah, I'll pay you, you know, $10,000. Yes, I will. You just have to say yes, you will. Otherwise, they stop you right there.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, Fatima and Desiree, do you want to introduce our brothers from Mexico, from Baja, the Alliance, who are on the program now?
Yeah. Hola, bienvenido, Octavio, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, gracias. Bien.
Gusto en
Saludos.
verte. Gracias por acompañarnos.
Gracias a usted.
So, hi, this is Octavio. Si te quieres presentar.
Sí, gracias. Octavio Ángel López, en representación de la Alianza de Organizaciones Nacional, Estatal y Municipal por la Justicia Social de los Jornaleros Agrícolas de San Quintín.
Gracias. Desiree, do you want to say anything?
Pues estamos muy feliz que estás con nosotros y ya estamos en el programa, estamos listos para escuchar tu testimonio, lo que está pasando en México. Fatima, do you want to give a little, just a little brief about introduction about what's going on over there, or do you want? I'm wondering. I can't see everyone fully. Let me see. Let me ask him a question. Octavio, is Fernando está aquí? Is Fernando here?
está aquí.
Yeah, Fernando is here.
Fernando. Maestro
Okay.
Fernando está ahí.
Okay, Fernando will be translating, I believe, for us. I can't see everybody on my screen. I don't know why.
If you put the gallery on, go up. above.
Okay, okay, here we go. I got it. Okay, Fernando, hola, ¿cómo estás?
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and I'm very happy that you're here. We have Fernando Marquez, who is also from Mexico, Baja California, Mexico. He'll be translating, and so Octavio is going to give you some history about what is going on in San Quintin, but before he does that, Fatima, do you want to give a brief introduction of who Octavio is, his organization, and what they've been doing?
Sure.
Okay.
Octavio is one of the spokesperson and leader that helped organize the rising of 80,000 plus workers that paralyzed the Pennsylvania, but yeah, that paralyzed the peninsula of Baja California through their mobilization and denouncing the modern day slavery wages and also conditions and the whole social and economic distribution of wealth in San Quintin, Baja California. Majority of the workers are indigenous, original people of this continent that still speak their native language and practice their native culture. Octavio is a part of the Alianza is the organization that started the committee before they won the first ever independent agricultural workers union in Mexico. That was also mentored by Rojas. And so that Octavio is one of the youngest organizers in the committee, and he is a really great organizer. And I will go ahead and allow him to give the presentation.
Good.
Adelante, Octavio.
Gracias. Pues, primero que nada, saludarles, saludarlos, compañeros, compañeras, todos los sindicatos democráticos y organizaciones de Estados Unidos y de todos los lugares donde organizamos trabajadores. Mi nombre es Octavio López, de la Alianza de Organizaciones Nacional, Estatal y Municipal por la Justicia Social.
Te voy a estar interrumpiendo, pero para ir traduciendo, ¿sale? So, hello, my name is Octavio Lopez. I'm from the Alliance for Social Justice from San Quintin. And I want to say hello to all the democratic and independent unions and organizations that are here today.
Quiero agradecer pues, hoy a Labor Fest por este espacio y por supuesto a Desiree, a Fatima y a las compañeras que siempre han estado al pendiente de nosotros, y estoy seguro que hoy estuviera muy orgulloso nuestro abuelo Al Rojas.
I want to thank everyone here, especially Desiree and Fatima, for inviting me to this Labor Fest. And I'm pretty sure that Al Rojas or Grandpa will be very proud of this moment.
Quiero comenzar diciendo que a más de 7 años del estallido social, laboral de jornaleros agrícolas en San Quintín, hasta el día de hoy hemos presentado en las mesas diferentes propuestas para seguir impulsando el rescate de los derechos de los trabajadores agrícolas en San Quintín.
So after 7 years of mobilizing, we have been working in defense of agricultural workers in San Quintin. And here I want to share some of the proposals that we are working on regarding the defense of agricultural workers.
También decirles que hemos buscado hasta el día de hoy que se rectifique el salario de los jornaleros agrícolas, una propuesta que hicimos al Congreso del Estado, a la gobernadora del Estado de Baja California. Es decir, la propuesta que hemos llevado y que estamos llevando para que se legisle este año, es decir, perdón, la rectificación del salario, como repito, quiere decir que separar las prestaciones de ley del salario diario base, porque las empresas agrícolas siguen pagando salarios compactados. O sea, en cada día laborado están incluyendo en el talón o en el cheque de los trabajadores sus prestaciones. Y no como debiera ser en forma y tiempo como lo constituye la Ley Federal del Trabajo en México.
Our main proposal or demand that we are working on, and we have talked with local congressmen and women. We have talked to the current governor of Baja California because our current demand or proposal is to disintegrate the salary, because right now most agricultural workers still have work under integrated salary scheme, which means that they don't receive their working benefits, but rather just one payment where supposedly they received compacted all the benefits, including salary.
Después de 7 años, seguimos viendo en los campos muchas injusticias, mucho acoso laboral en contra de jornaleras agrícolas y las condiciones son muy similares. Ciertamente han habido algunos cambios en los campos, pero los jornaleros agrícolas siguen trabajando bajo las condiciones de empresas transnacionales, y en este caso voy a hablar de Driscoll, que ustedes conocen el tema. Es por eso que hemos impulsado esta campaña de boicot, y que, por cierto, nuestro compañero Rojas siempre fue apoyador de la decisión que tomamos de impulsar este boicot, porque ha sido Driscoll una de las empresas que más ha condicionado el salario de los trabajadores y violado las leyes en México.
So part of this campaign that we have been working on in order to make agricultural workers work under fair conditions and have all the benefits that they should have by law as workers has been the campaign to boycott Driscoll, which Al Rojas helped us and supported from the beginning, because Driscoll's it's a transnational company, and it's the most dominant company in San Quintin. And it continues, not only Driscoll's, but the companies that work for Driscoll's, that are most companies in San Quintin, continue to violate workers' rights and continue to harass workers, especially women agricultural workers.
Ante todo este trabajo que hemos realizado, recientemente nos cumplimentaron órdenes de aprehensión en el estado de Baja California. Hemos sido perseguidos políticamente, socialmente por alguna funcionaria del estado, del gobierno del estado activa, y en complicidad con algunas autoridades fiscales que conocen la labor que hemos realizado en el Valle Agrícola de San Quintín. Actualmente estamos vinculados a proceso, el compañero Bonofacio y yo, en este momento.
Currently, actually, we are being persecuted legally. We were fabricated some charges and that we are undergoing that process. And this attack, because this is political persecution, it's led by one individual politician that is right now part of the governor's cabinet, that once fabricated some illegal charges against me and Bonifacio because of our work to defend agricultural workers in San Quintin.
Nuestro compañero Bonifacio Martínez Cruz estuvo encerrado 40 minutos por las autoridades fiscales locales de San Quintín y de manera arbitraria, violenta, pero gracias a la organización y movilización de los compañeros jornaleros, Bonifacio pudo salir libre y en este momento pues estamos enfrentando esta vinculación a proceso. Tenemos una audiencia el próximo 15 de septiembre. Estamos esperando que sea la última audiencia para que se compruebe nuestra inocencia, porque nos fabricaron más bien delitos, nos están acusando de delitos que no hemos cometido. Sin embargo, hay algunas autoridades que se prestaron a realizar este tipo de expedientes, pero al final de cuentas, nosotros estamos muy conscientes de la labor que estamos haciendo en favor de los derechos humanos y laborales de los jornaleros agrícolas de San Quintín.
In this process that we have been going through, my colleague Bonifacio was retained for 40 minutes illegally by local authorities in San Quintin. But thanks to the organization pressure there, he was freed. So both Bonifacio and me are going through this process in liberty, and we will have our next audience on September 15, where we hope, which we hope is the last one, because we are innocent, and we hope we get over this process on this following audience.
Estamos también muy agradecidos con las organizaciones, los sindicatos, las organizaciones laborales por el apoyo que han dado, y también muy agradecidos con el LCLAA de Sacramento por apoyarnos en esta situación tan complicada, pero que al final nosotros vamos a demostrar nuestra inocencia y sabemos que contamos con el respaldo de muchos de ustedes que saben de la labor que hemos hecho, y estamos esperando que este 15 de septiembre pues no se vaya a cometer alguna injusticia en contra de Bonifacio, en contra de mi persona, y no es porque seamos nosotros, sino porque no queremos que se cometa ninguna injusticia en contra de ningún defensor de derechos humanos, en contra de ningún defensor de jornaleros agrícolas.
We are thankful for the support of organizations, unions, especially LCLAA in the U.S. that have supported us throughout this process. We do hope this process is over soon, and we are free of any charges. And we also hope that the political persecution against rights defenders stops in San Quintin, because that's what we are. We are defenders of rights, and we are certain that this accusation is because of our work defending workers in San Quintin.
Y también, por último, para cerrar, decirles, por un lado, nosotros vamos a continuar la campaña de boicot internacional contra la empresa Driscoll, porque fue una decisión que tomamos en asamblea en San Quintín desde el 2015, y porque fue también apoyada esta decisión en Estados Unidos, sobre todo por el apoyo de nuestro compañero Al Rojas, y en memoria del compañero Al Rojas, esta campaña no va a parar. Como se había desinformado algunas organizaciones allá, nosotros vamos a continuar como San Quintín con esta campaña. Y dos, decirles que también vamos a iniciar una campaña en redes sociales y en páginas a través de los medios de comunicación para que en esta próxima audiencia del 15 de septiembre pues se pueda ver el soporte o el apoyo hacia Bonifacio y hacia mi persona. Y tres, pues decirles que estamos listos y puestos para seguir organizando. Nosotros traemos varias propuestas que estamos presentando al Congreso del Estado para el tema de los jornaleros agrícolas, como el tema de los salarios y las prestaciones, que ha sido una propuesta que hemos puesto desde el 2015 en la mesa y reclamando esos salarios que le corresponde por ley a los trabajadores. Nosotros en 2015 decíamos, ¿por qué Driscoll no puede pagar a los trabajadores como paga a 6 horas de la frontera en dólares? Estamos hablando que una caja de fresa está en $40 en Estados Unidos y en México no pueden pagar ni 200, 300 pesos al día. Es la misma empresa. ¿Por qué en Estados Unidos pagan más y en México violan las leyes y le pagan menos a los trabajadores? Pero decirles también que les manda muchos saludos Bonifacio. No pude estar ahora porque teníamos una asamblea y yo tuve que atender esta reunión, pero Bonifacio les manda muchos saludos y está muy agradecido con todos ustedes por el apoyo y el soporte.
I want to end my participation by saying first that since 2015, we have been leading the campaign to boycott Driscoll's. We will continue to do so for both to defend the agricultural workers in San Quintin and to honor our comrade Rojas. Also, we will begin a campaign on social media and with different news media to raise awareness of the persecution we are suffering right now and gather support in preparation for the audience on September 15. And finally, Bonifacio couldn't be here now because he is right now in an assembly of our organization. So I had to attend this meeting in his name, but he is very thankful for the support. And we will continue to organize and work in defense of the agricultural workers in San Quintin. We are working in several proposals that we are presenting to the local Congress. And we hope that the working conditions of the agricultural workers in San Quintin improves, because we are not demanding something that it's not fair, but we are just demanding that the law is implemented as it should be to San Quintin workers, because Driscoll sells in the U.S. a little box of strawberries for $40, and they don't even want to pay 300 pesos to the workers, which is what they have to pay by law. 300 pesos is like $15. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
So thank you very much for that presentation. And I think it's very important for American workers to support this struggle in Mexico with our brothers and sisters and their families in Baja. And one Labor Fest is been formed to build solidarity with workers, not only in the United States, San Francisco, where there was a general strike, but workers in Mexico. And the work that you do is critical for human beings, for people in the United States and around the world. And we have a responsibility to organize in support of your struggle for human rights, for wages, for your union. So we're happy that you can join us, and we will continue to work with you and to support you in your struggle.
Steve comentó que pues te agradece, Octavio, por estar aquí, te apoya en tu lucha y porque pues el objetivo de Labor Fest no es solo apoyar a los trabajadores en Estados Unidos, pero también a nuestros compañeros y compañeras trabajadores en México. Entonces, pues aplaude tu presentación y gracias.
Gracias.
Gracias. So are there any other questions and comments? I mean, one of the things that we see is that the government, the repression against them by the police, the courts, the judicial system is being pushed by Driscoll's, this US multinational, to try to shut them up and prevent the workers from organizing for their rights. And maybe you can talk about the conditions of the workers now who work for subcontractors for Driscoll's.
Steve dice que pues saben que esta campaña está orquestada por Driscoll y quería saber si pudieras platicar brevemente cuáles son un ejemplo de las condiciones en las que trabajan los jornaleros de las empresas que son que trabajan para Driscoll, o sea que son proveedores de Driscoll ahí en San Quintín.
Las condiciones son muy similares a los trabajadores H2A, a los que están en Estados Unidos. Me refiero a la carga de trabajo. Digamos que Driscoll aumentó el salario digamos, ahorita los trabajadores están ganando alrededor de 280 pesos, pero si el trabajador falla un día a la semana, ya no gana 280 pesos, gana menos, gana 200. Entonces, si falla un día, le reducen el salario y eso es ilegal, pero lo están haciendo. Entonces, el punto es que es una de las empresas que explota más a los trabajadores, les pide más rendimiento y les paga menos, el salario es muy, muy bajo. Y la empresa Driscoll está condicionando a las demás empresas a que paguen lo que ellos pagan. O sea, ellos determinan el salario en Baja California. Ellos determinan las condiciones en Baja California. Y hay pequeñas empresas o pequeños productores que tienen que afiliarse a Driscoll y tienen que afiliarse a las condiciones. Algunas empresas pequeñas dicen, es que Driscoll también no solamente pasó a afectar a los trabajadores agrícolas, también nos está afectando como productores, porque quiere que le vendamos todo el producto, porque él nos vende la planta, porque ellos son nuestra etiqueta en el mercado, y al final yo estoy ganando como productor el 30% de todo lo que estoy haciendo y Driscoll se queda con el 70%. ¿Qué quiere decir esto? Que Driscoll no solamente explota a los trabajadores, también se aprovecha de los pequeños productores mexicanos.
So an example of what happens is that Driscoll pays around $14 to workers per day. But if a worker misses one day of work, not only the worker doesn't have that day of salary, but Driscoll unilaterally reduces the salary of the agricultural worker for the other days that the worker does work from $14 to $10, which is illegal and they shouldn't do. And not only they affect agricultural workers in San Quintin, but also they affect small producers, Mexican small producers in San Quintin, because small owners of land or producers have explained that since Driscoll is so dominant in the market and with capitalism, Driscoll can do whatever they want. They make every producer in San Quintin area to sell their products to Driscoll at the price that Driscoll decides. And not only that, they condition the buying of their product to replicate the same unfair and illegal working conditions to their workers if they want to sell their products to Driscoll, which again, it's very difficult or almost impossible for small Mexican producers to survive there if they don't sell to Driscoll just because of the control that Driscoll has of the market. So that's an example of how they not only impose their working conditions, which are illegal again, to the workers, but also to small producers, which again, it's a problem because most companies in San Quintin are not literally named Driscoll, but most of them work for Driscoll.
And maybe you can talk, there was a protest recently for education, for the right of young people to have education and the jailing of a teacher. Maybe you can talk about the conditions of the children and your fight for public education in Baja for the farm workers' children.
Octavio, te pregunta Steve si pudieras también hablar un poco de, supo que recientemente hubo protestas y movilizaciones para exigir al gobierno que dé educación gratuita a los niños ahí en San Quintín porque no todos tienen acceso, especialmente pues la mayoría de los niños que son hijos o hijas de trabajadores agrícolas. No sé si puedas hablar de eso.
Sí. De hecho, sí tenemos muchas deficiencias en el área de educación. Es cierto que han llegado algunos programas del gobierno federal para apoyos económicos hacia los hijos de jornaleros, pero aún sigue habiendo mucho déficit porque digamos que no hay atención de parte de la Secretaría de Educación para abrir las suficientes escuelas para que tengan acceso los hijos de los jornaleros. Pero digamos que no hay una atención integral como tal de parte de la Secretaría de Educación y de algunas otras instituciones que tienen que ver con que los niños tengan acceso a la educación. Digamos también que las empresas en este momento ya están viendo a los hijos de los jornaleros desde que están en preparatoria para reclutarlos y llevarlos a través de visas H2A, se los están llevando desde la prepa, se los están llevando a Estados Unidos porque ven la fuerza laboral de los jóvenes y muchos jóvenes están desertando de la preparatoria para irse contratados bajo visas H2A y esto está generando muchísimos problemas. Es por eso que no alcanzamos el nivel de educación que deberíamos en San Quintín.
So one of the main problems in San Quintin is that there are not enough public schools for the amount of children and just people underage in San Quintin. So what happens is that a lot of young people don't get a chance to continue to study. Even in high schools in San Quintin, there are a lot of hookers or recruiters that recruit them to work in the US with the H-2A visas, which is a problem because a lot of young people leave the school. They don't even finish high school to go work in the US, for example. And when they return, they don't continue school. And this is not mentioned by Octavio, but I wanted to add that it's a problem because when they return and they no longer have the option to work in the US, they continue to work in agriculture in Mexico with the really awful working conditions that are there. So that has been very problematic. So we have also denounced that problem with the authorities.
And what would you like people in the United States to do, workers and trade unions in the United States to do to help you organize and support your struggle?
Finalmente, pregunta Steve, ¿qué es lo que podrían hacer las organizaciones, tanto sindicatos como organizaciones laborales en Estados Unidos para apoyar su lucha?
Pues hay algunas formas que nosotros habíamos platicado con Desiree, con la compañera Desiree y con el señor Al Rojas en su momento. Falta mucho apoyo en el tema de organización. Bueno, me refiero a la parte económica, ¿no? Habíamos platicado de algunos programas, a lo mejor de becas para hijos de jornaleros, con el señor Al Rojas en su momento, y de poder impulsar algunos programas que puedan beneficiar directamente a las familias jornaleras, ¿no? Programas que les beneficien, educativos. En su momento hablábamos de la Universidad Intercultural, que es un logro ya, que ya está aprobada, que nos tocó gestionar como alianza de organizaciones, y programas, digo, educativos, programas de donde los jóvenes puedan estar demostrando sus talentos artísticos, sociales, culturales, pero sobre todo sí falta mucho el recurso económico para poder movilizar y organizar. Ese siempre ha sido un problema para nosotros en San Quintín.
So our main issue to organize and have more impact of our actions as the alliance, as la alianza, is the economic resources, because that's always a problem here. We talk with Al and Desiree before about maybe establishing a program of scholarships for children or kids of agricultural workers. Actually, the Intercultural University of Baja California, we as the Alianza, we struggled to make that happen, and that's now a reality. But one of the problems is that it is still insufficient for children of agricultural workers.
And do they enforce the labor laws for children, protection of children? And what are the environmental conditions on the fields in the subcontractor fields?
Sí, pregunto dos cosas. Una es que, ¿cómo es la situación de los trabajadores menores? O sea, ¿los protege la ley o hay una ley que los protege, pero en la realidad no se respeta? Y otra cosa, ¿cuál es la condiciones climáticas en las que trabajan los jornaleros? Me imagino, pues yo sé ahorita que en California hay un problema muy fuerte del calor intenso, entonces me imagino que se refiere a algo así.
Digamos que los jornaleros menores de edad vienen subcontratados a través del outsourcing desde Puebla, Chiapas, Puebla, Chiapas, Veracruz, Guerrero. Los traen justamente la empresa Berrymex, que es filial de Driscoll, que es de la familia Reiter, son de la misma familia. Vienen contratados menores de 13, 14, 15 años y los alojan en campamentos. Por eso es que ellos sostienen que no hay trabajo infantil, pero sigue habiendo en la actualidad. En sus campamentos hay jóvenes de Puebla, de Guerrero, de Veracruz, de Chiapas, que son menores de edad, pero vienen bajo el outsourcing. O sea, es decir, prácticamente las leyes mexicanas no respaldan a los jóvenes porque no están registrados, porque no están contratados bajo la ley. Son bajo outsourcing, sobre subcontratación. Y dos...
Déjame traducir ese pedazo.
Sí.
So Octavio, first I'm going to translate what he said about underage workers or children workers. What happens is that companies like Berrymex, which is, the Mexican, is one of the biggest suppliers of Driscoll in San Quintin, recruits underage workers as young as 14 years old in states of southern Mexico like Veracruz, Guerrero, Chiapas, and Puebla, and brings them as workers, even if they are sure they have no underage workers. What happens is that they don't hire them legally. They hire them in an illegal scheme where they pay them in cash, and they have them living in camps in very bad conditions, exactly where they work in the agricultural fields. And they continue to do so. They were doing so, they have been doing so for decades, but even if they say they don't do it anymore, they continue to do so, especially companies like Berrymex.
Y la otra parte, en el tema de las condiciones climáticas, digamos que ni para menores de edad, ni para los trabajadores en general, ni para las jornaleras, no hay ningún programa que pueda, digamos, regular las jornadas intensas de trabajo bajo estas condiciones de mucho calor. Siguen trabajando bajo las mallas sombras, que son túneles que arropan mucho calor, y no tienen, no tienen condiciones para estar ahí. Sin embargo, siguen trabajando bajo el mismo ritmo, bajo el mismo salario. Pero aquí más que tratar de un salario, yo creo que se trata de, de, de- de no ser inhumanos, de ver de que hay temporadas fuertes de calor y de descansar a los trabajadores cada cierto tiempo y reducirles la jornada de trabajo. Pero ninguna empresa ha aplicado algún programa que ayude en los momentos tanto de calor, así como en las temporadas de heladas o de frío, ¿no? En invierno. No existe, no existe.
The environmental conditions in San Quintin in the summer are the heat reaches very high numbers, and there is no company currently that has protections, special protections for workers. They normally they work under some kind of shade name in Spanish Maya Sombra, which the material of that shade actually makes the heat to be capsuled, and that increases the heating sensation for workers, making work more difficult and more physically intense. And companies should at least reduce the number of hours per working day, but they don't. They don't care about the working conditions of workers. And agricultural workers in San Quintin continue to work even with those conditions. So, and also there are some times in winter that the cold is also very high, and equally as in the summer, there are no special protections for workers.
Well, this is important information to get out to people in the United States. Does anyone else have any questions or comments about what's going on in Baja?
I'd like to make a comment. Fernando, si puedes ayudarme en español, por favor. I just want to make a comment that the economic, the financial assistance is very important. Their legal fees, they are working with an attorney, but often they have to meet this attorney in Tijuana. Tijuana is about 5 hours away from where they're located. And even though the gas prices are not the same as what's going on over here, it's still a huge cost for them to drive from San Quintin all the way to Tijuana, and for gas, food, and sometimes maybe lodging if they can't stay with friends, and also to help with legal for legal costs. Steve Lakla and a few other people have been able to make very small contributions. If anyone would like to, they're accepting donations, contributions at $25, maybe a little bit more. They'll accept anything because it's very costly to them. And one of the reasons why they are being attacked is, first of all, before they were attacked, they were blackballed. When they came out on the Driscoll boycott, they were blackballed with all with Driscoll and the subsidiary growers that, like he explained, sell their berries or in partnership with Driscoll, not sell their berries, but are in partnership with Driscoll somehow. They became blackballed and they had to seek employment in other ways, and also then came the attacks. And so this is historically what happens to labor organizers and activists in history throughout the world, and it's unfortunate and heartbreaking that this is happening to them. I've been to San Quintin and I've seen the level of poverty there, and it's very it's just very moving, heartfelt moving, and so I think that if there's anything that we could do until September, if we can make some kind of small donations or contributions to them, that would be very helpful to them.
Well, maybe tell us how to send the money.
Through LCLAA. I mean, if we send it to LCLAA or Desiree, they'll get it to them. And
Right.
I think the problem has been there's a lack of information. And I want to thank you for presenting what the conditions are. Gracias for the information from Información, because it's unknown in the United States really what kind of slave labor conditions are right on the border of these agricultural workers and their families, and when these people eat berries, what the conditions are of the workers. And I think if that was well known, they would have much more support. I mean, this is right on the border of the United States, the conditions. So it's important that we get this information out. Harpreet?
Let me translate real quick to
Okay.
Octavio. Nomás Octavio Desiree comentó que pues sí, tú y la organización sí necesitan apoyo económico porque ahorita en el proceso legal en el que están, pues tienen que pagar abogados y el abogado luego a veces tienen que ir a Tijuana y pues la gasolina y todo, ¿no? Entonces está pidiendo pues que los apoyen y pues está diciendo que, o sea, lo que puedan, pero que sí necesitan apoyo y que pues ya les está diciendo que por medio del ACLA se puede apoyar y que sí están recibiendo donaciones. Básicamente eso, con palabras más, ¿no? Pero eso.
Harpreet, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just had was just gonna ask, like, if you guys had some social media that we could share, like, yeah, if you have anything that we could share with, you know, people that we know online, maybe that can prompt more people to donate.
Harpreet menciona que está preguntando si tienen redes sociales para compartir la información. ¿Tiene alguna información en redes sociales que puedan compartir? Me imagino que puede ser imágenes, texto, lo que sea, y así puede ver si hay personas de sus conocidos que pueden donar.
Ok. Sí, sí tenemos.
Igual, pues no sé si quieres ponernos en el chat, no sé.
Sí.
So Octavio answer that they do have social media. I asked him if he could put it in the chat, or if not, maybe Desiree can share the social media with all of you.
Okay. Also, we will be getting this video out so that people can see it. And also we can have a link to how people can contribute directly to you, you know, through PayPal or whatever social media. I mean, people can send payments to you directly. So we'll work on getting the story out and building solidarity with your union, with your members, your families, so people can get the stories. And maybe you can get some pictures as well of the conditions of workers in the fields, children. What are the conditions, so that we can put that in to the video, so people will see the conditions that you're talking about.
Steve dice que si les pudieras enviar o de alguna manera que ellos les lleguen imágenes de las condiciones en las que trabajan ahí en San Quintín, eso también pudiera ayudar para recabar donaciones, nomás para mencionarte eso. And also, just for you all to know, Octavio just posted the Facebook organization on the chat, so you can follow them there and check. They have, I know they have some pictures and statements in Spanish though, but they have some pictures.
That's very good. Too. Also, when you go to court, maybe you can have a press conference and put it on Facebook, and we can publicize it so that we can get that out to people all over the United States and internationally. So when you go to the court, organize a press conference, a solidarity press conference on Facebook, and let us know when it will be, what time, and then we can publicize that on our international labor network.
Dice Steve que también si pudieran hacer una rueda de prensa poquito antes de que sea su audiencia, que la pongan en Facebook, eso servirá mucho para correr la voz y que más personas vean y pues me imagino que también apoyen.
Fernando, también voy a estar publicando en la página de la Alianza, pero también creo que Desiree nos puede ayudar mucho para poder rolar esa información. Hemos sacado algunas notas en redes sociales y yo creo que Desiree puede compartirles a todos, pero también si visitan la página yo voy a estar compartiendo en estos momentos más tarde toda la información sobre nuestra situación.
So Octavio mentions that they have been posting in social media their situation and pictures and statements, but also throughout the day he will be posting again the situation of the persecution that they are suffering right now. So Lagla and Desiree and others can help share and look at what is going on in their social media.
Very good. Well, we'll back you up. We support your struggle. Your struggle is our struggle.
Que los van a apoyar y que su lucha es tu lucha es su lucha.
I found on Facebook, Alianza de Organizaciones Sociales. Is that your organization? Is that the one?
Yes, that's their organization.
Okay.
Por la justicia social.
Steve, one question Cindy had mentioned. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, if you go into a store, whether it's a co-op like you're talking about in Minnesota, let's say it's Whole Foods out here or something, or another co-op on Alhambra Street, and we happen to see Driscoll products, I'll just phone Desiree, but what's the prescribed manner of getting the word out on that?
Well, you could have a picture of the children working in the fields and say that this is what Driscoll's doing. Driscoll's using children labor. Driscoll is attacking the farm workers union. You can have a flyer to explain that to people. I mean, people don't know when they buy Driscoll berries what the conditions are of the farm workers in Baja. There's no information. I mean, we have to get the information, break the information blockade is what we have to do.
Thanks.
I'd like to mention that before COVID we were having pretty consistent Driscoll actions, especially statewide, annual statewide actions throughout the country. And I even think of France and Australia, they had actions. And it slowed down once COVID hit. And with this attack on the key organizers who called for the boycott, it's very difficult to have a lot of actions, but with all the work that we've done in the past, and those who have done work in the past and nationwide and internationally, they're still holding up, you know, the holding the boycott. The boycott's not over. It hasn't ended, and people are still boycotting these berries. I believe that after this legal battle is over, Octavio and the organizers have mentioned that they're going to talk about what's next. And so as supporters of the boycott and carrying the boycott here, the key leaders, the key architects to, you know, what happens next, it comes out of San Quintin. And so once they get past this legal situation, I was told, you know, they're going to have a meeting about, what happens next. And so that'll be very important and very key. And perhaps we can come back to a shorter version of Labor Fest with Steve and come online and announce, what they want to do and how to go about it and how we're going to, pick up where they left off or where we all left off.
And maybe an online petition demanding they drop the charges.
Yeah,
In Spanish and English. We should have a petition.
We should we should tell Octavio right now, ask him.
Yeah, well, let's have if you could get a petition going, online petition in English and Spanish, drop the charges. We could get people to sign that. And that would be a good way of really focusing on the fact that this repression is coming about precisely because of your organizing to defend your fellow workers and the families in Baja.
Dice que no sé si puedas, Octavio, hacer una petición de esas online. No sé, ya ves que hay cosas que le das clic y se agregan las firmas en español y en inglés para exigir que se retiren los cargos contra ustedes y pues hablar de la lucha y de pues que esto es persecución política. Dice que si puedes hacer eso podrán circular más fácil información y pues compartirla.
Good. Okay. Well, I think I want to thank you on behalf of Labor Fest for your important contribution here in presenting what is the real conditions of the Farm Workers Union in Baja, and also the conditions of your family, your children. And we pledge that we will continue to struggle to support you. You're not alone, and we're going to build support with you, Octavio.
Octavio, pues te agradecen y te dicen que pues van a seguir apoyando y que muchas gracias por esta presentación.
Gracias.
Gracias. Solidarity. So thank you all. Good.
Steve, I have a question for you.
Sure.
How much time do we have left?
On this call?
On this conference, yeah.
Well, we don't have an end time.
A minute?
We have time. We have time.
Okay, I would just like to bring up an issue that LCLAA is in partnership with a handful of organizations throughout California, many of which are out of Kern County, who are in support of the Mesa Verde inmate, asylum inmate workers. They're inmates, immigrant inmates, I hate using that term, who have been forced to clean the facilities inside of this ICE prison in Mesa Verde, Kern County, and they are now on their second strike. And I would just like to just throw this out there. They're asking for a lot of support. On our LCLAA Facebook page, we have a letter of support that we uploaded. And so if you guys have time, if you could please, read that.
Desiree, what is the link on that?
Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, Sacramento chapter. That's our Facebook name. And I can also email it to Steve, and he can send it out to everyone.
Yeah, the link. Yeah, because
I interviewed the workers who are on strike.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a radio show.
Wonderful, wonderful.
The GO
wonderful.
workers. Yeah, I interviewed them. So
wonderful.
Again, slave labor, $1 a day on July 4th for workers in this country,
right,
in the prisons.
Well, we definitely want to be connected to your radio program on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks,
Steve.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Thanks for bringing that out. That's been out there for a while with the asylum inmate workers being forced to clean up the ICE facilities. That's been going on for a while. So thanks.
Good. Okay, well, thank you all, and we'll see you again. Solidarity, brothers and sisters.
All right.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay,
Keep on
bye-bye.
keeping on.
Keep it on. Take care.
Hasta luego.
Bye-bye. Okay.
Okay.